I've been driving nights for 6 years. Same streets, same silence. But that night, the city felt different. People think night drivers are ghosts with keys. And maybe they're right. We haunt the roads when everyone else is asleep. We drift through alleyways and empty boulevards like shadows, carrying strangers through darkness. We know every pothole, every flickering streetlight, every shortcut the GPS doesn't. But that night, the city didn't feel like mine. My name's David. David S. Rowe. 42. Divorced. One kid I don't see enough. I drive a beat-up yellow cab through the midnight sprawl of a city that forgot how to sleep. It pays the bills. Barely. But I take pride in knowing this town better than most. Every turn, every back street, every gas station with a clean restroom. That night started like any other. I grabbed lukewarm coffee from the corner place on 5th, nodded to the same tired barista who never smiled back, and slipped behind the wheel at 9 p.m. sharp. Fog rolled in around 10, thick, low, clinging to the gutters like smoke. The streets emptied faster than usual. No clubs, no bar hoppers. Even the regulars, drunks, nurses, students, were nowhere to be seen. By 2 a.m., I'd only had 3 rides, light traffic, light tips, and an eerie silence that felt heavier than the fog itself. I remember checking the rear view. No one there, of course. Just me and my tired eyes. Something felt off, but I chalked it up to exhaustion. Happens when your life's just headlights and yellow lines. Then, at exactly 2:33 a.m., my phone pinged. The screen lit up with a ride request from Harrow's End. Now, let me be clear. No one ever pings from Harrow's End. It's a dead-end road, half a mile off the interstate. Used to be farmland, then a dumping ground. Now just weeds and whispering trees. It wasn't even fully mapped anymore. But someone wanted a pickup. And I, against the chill crawling up my neck, accepted it. The route blinked on screen. A straight shot east, past 3 exits, then a right where the map just faded. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to decline the ride. Cancel. Call it a night. But my thumb moved on its own. Accepted. I drove. The city stretched thinner the farther I went. Storefronts closed, streetlights grew sparse, the fog thickened until my high beams looked like dull flashlights in a snow globe. Radio static came and went. No music. Just a low hum, like the city was holding its breath. I told myself it was just another weird fare. Maybe someone drunk got lost. Maybe it was nothing. But as my tires crunched over gravel and dead leaves pulling onto Harrow's End, I realized something strange. I wasn't alone on the road. Someone, or something, was waiting. And the night had just begun. He looked too clean, too calm, like he didn't belong in my cab, or this world. The GPS had long gone dark. I was idling at the edge of Harrow's End, my cab's engine purring low, headlights barely cutting through the wall of fog that swallowed the road ahead. The silence pressed against the windows. I checked the time. 2:33 a.m. Still. No movement. No sign of anyone. I was about to cancel the ride, maybe call it a glitch, when my back door clicked open. I didn't hear footsteps, didn't see anyone approach. Just click. The door opened, and a man slid in behind me. "Good evening," he said, voice smooth, like it had been dipped in still water. I glanced in the rearview mirror. He looked like he had walked straight out of a black and white movie. Tall, thin, dressed in an old-fashioned black suit, crisp and tailored, a narrow tie, buttoned to the throat, gloves, and a hat. A wide-brimmed fedora that shadowed most of his face. But I could see enough. Too clean. Too calm. Like someone playing dress-up, or someone who never got the memo that time had moved on. "Where to?" I asked, already knowing I wouldn't get a normal answer. He leaned slightly forward, but not enough to break the shadows on his face. "Just drive," he said. "Straight ahead." I waited for more. An address, a cross street, anything. But the man sat back and folded his hands in his lap like this was a carriage ride through the countryside. "Sir, The GPS isn't showing any destination. I need something to work with. No need, he said, calm as a whisper. You'll know the way. I should have pushed. I should have said no. But my hand moved the shifter to drive, and the wheels rolled forward like they had a will of their own. As I crept deeper into the fog, I noticed the heater was still on, but my fingers felt numb. The cold wasn't from the outside. It was sinking in from somewhere else, somewhere behind me. I stole another glance at the mirror. The man sat motionless, staring straight ahead. And then he spoke again. You've driven this road before. I blinked. Excuse me? He didn't answer. Didn't move. I shook it off. Just another weirdo, I thought. The city was full of them. Maybe he was some actor doing a late-night role play, or one of those weird ghost tour types. Still, I turned the heater up. As the miles passed, I realized something else. I didn't recognize the road anymore. And that's saying something. I know this city like the veins on the back of my hand, but the road ahead was lined with unfamiliar trees. No lights, no signs, just black sky above, thick fog around, and a passenger behind me who hadn't blinked since he stepped into my cab. I cleared my throat. So, what takes you out this far tonight? Nothing. Silence. Then, finally, he replied, some things must be revisited before they're remembered. I laughed nervously. You're not gonna kill me, are you? No, he said, then paused. But someone did. My blood ran cold. I looked at him in the mirror, just in time to see his face tilt upward slightly. His skin was pale, too pale, and his eyes, they were fixed on me, like he could see through the mirror, through my skin, right down to my bones. I almost swerved. Okay, I said, voice cracking. That's enough, man. I don't care if this is some prank. I'm taking you back. I tapped the screen to reroute. But there was nothing to tap. The GPS was dead. The map gone. My phone screen had gone completely black. The only light now came from the dashboard clock. 2:33 a.m. Still, exactly the same as when he entered. Exactly the same as when the night began to fall apart. And when I looked back in the mirror, he was smiling. I know this city, but nothing looked right anymore. The street signs were gone. The buildings were wrong. I kept driving, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't seem to stop. The man in the back, still stiff, still silent, hadn't given me another word since that cryptic line about someone being killed. My knuckles were white on the wheel, fingers trembling even though the heat blasted from the vents. But it wasn't warm anymore. Not really. The cold I felt, it wasn't physical. It was in the bones. Streetlights passed above, flickering like dying stars. Then something happened. I took a left at what should have been 8th and Main, a turn I've made 1,000 times, easy muscle memory, and found myself on a road I'd never seen before. Not in this city. Not in any city. The buildings that lined the street were old, not vintage, wrong, too narrow, too tall, twisted, like they'd been built in a rush by someone who had never seen real buildings before. Storefronts with no names, windows blacked out, some walls pulsing slightly like they were breathing. What the hell? I muttered. I tapped the meter, thinking maybe, just maybe, I could get this ride over with and return to something normal. The meter blinked, and then the numbers began to run backward. $13.40, $12.90, $12.10, $11.30. I hit the brakes. The cab slowed, but the buildings outside didn't. They slid by slowly, like I was still moving forward. Like the world outside wasn't bound to me anymore. I glanced down. My phone screen, which had gone dark earlier, was now lit, but instead of a map or an app, it displayed just 2 words in stark white on a black background. Turn around. I froze. Okay, I whispered, shaking my head. I'm done with this. I'm done. I looked up. The road ahead led to a single glowing intersection. 4 streets, no names, no traffic lights. Just an eerie hum, like distant electricity. I turned left, drove a block, then right, then another right. Looping back should have taken me somewhere familiar. But when I reached the end of the block, I was right back at the same intersection. Same cracked pavement, same crooked fire hydrant, same flickering neon sign above a building that read nothing but open, in letters half burned out. I looped again, and again. I tried turning on my hazard lights, like that would somehow anchor me to reality. The lights blinked. But when I looked in the mirror, they weren't reflecting off the passenger. He was still sitting there, still not moving, like a shadow cast in human form. I turned off the hazards. The GPS buzzed suddenly, loud, sharp, like a scream. It came back to life for just a second, showing one blinking red dot with text beneath it. "You are not where you think you are." And then, static. Gone again. I grabbed the radio, desperate. "Dispatch, this is cab 2917. I'm lost. Something's wrong with my system. I need directions, please." The radio hissed, then clicked, and a voice, no, a chorus of whispers replied, "He knows the way. Let him show you." I dropped the mic. The man behind me finally shifted. Just his head. Slightly. Slowly. "Keep driving," he said, the words stretching like molasses. I could barely speak. Where are we going?" His voice was colder than the air now swirling in the cab. "Where you were always meant to be." I looked out the window again. The buildings were gone. The street had vanished. Now there was only fog, and the feeling that I had just crossed a line you're not supposed to cross and come back from. He hadn't said a word in 10 minutes, but I heard someone whisper my name. I don't know how long I'd been driving through that dead space. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. Time didn't tick normally anymore. The fog had swallowed the world outside, and the man behind me, if he was a man, hadn't moved. Not once. No breath, no shifting. Just silence. I stared ahead, knuckles locked on the wheel, jaw clenched. The only sound was the engine's hum, and even that felt distant, like it wasn't mine. Then I heard it, a whisper, right behind my ear. "David." I jerked the wheel. The cab swerved, tires screeching against pavement that didn't look like pavement anymore. My heart slammed against my ribs. I looked in the mirror. The passenger was still sitting perfectly still, eyes forward, expression unchanged. But the whisper had been real. I know my name when I hear it. It was soft, like someone exhaling it directly into my ear. A child's voice. Familiar. I turned the radio down, though it was already just static, and tried to laugh it off. Stress, I told myself. Hallucination. Sleep deprivation. Then it came again. "David." I whipped around, but the back seat was empty. Empty. No one. The man in the black suit was gone. The door hadn't opened. The cab hadn't stopped. And yet the space where he'd been sitting was vacant, except for the faint imprint on the seat. And something else, the mirror. I looked into it again, just for a second. I swear on everything. I saw someone there. Me. But not me as I was. Me, pale, hollow-eyed, staring back from the back seat like a passenger who didn't belong in his own body. And right behind that ghostly reflection, in the far back of the cab, something darker moved. I spun around, still empty. The heater was blasting full, but my breath clouded in front of me. And then came the voices, more of them. Low murmurs at first, then phrases, details, names, dates, mine. "You dropped out of college. You told her you'd come back. You missed her 5th birthday." They weren't just whispers anymore. They were memories. Sins I'd buried deep under routine. Failures I hadn't spoken of in years. Regrets I tried to outdrive every night I sat behind this wheel. I grabbed the rearview mirror and angled it down, away from my line of sight. And for a moment, silence returned. Then, "Look at me." A voice, deep and cold. I didn't want to, but I did. I raised my eyes slowly to the mirror, And there he was. The man in the black suit. Not sitting anymore. Staring at me directly through the mirror, his face inches from mine. But when I spun around, the back seat was still empty. No door had opened. No sound. Nothing. Just the shape of a figure burned into the air, like the memory of something that should no longer exist. I pressed the brakes hard, heart pounding out of rhythm. But the cab didn't stop. It just kept going. And the clock on the dashboard? 2:33 a.m. Still. Always. I turned around. He was gone. But the seat was soaked, not with water. I had to stop. I didn't care if I was in the middle of nowhere, or somewhere worse. I just couldn't keep driving. My foot slammed on the brakes, and the cab screeched to a stop on a road that had no name, no lights, no signs of life. I turned around slowly, heart thundering in my chest. And just like that, he was gone. The passenger in the black suit. The man with no scent, no warmth, no breath. The one who hadn't moved or spoken in miles had vanished. The door hadn't opened. There was no sound of it closing, no weight shifting. Just gone. I blinked, hoping maybe my eyes had finally cracked under the pressure, that when I looked again, he'd be there, right where he'd been all night. But the back seat was empty, except for the blood. Thick, dark, soaking into the cracked vinyl upholstery. Not fresh, but not dry either. A deep maroon pool spreading across the seat, glistening under the weak cabin light like oil on water. I gagged. I hadn't noticed a smell until now, but it hit me. Metallic, warm, sickening. I stared, stunned, unable to move. Then the cab radio clicked on. I hadn't touched it. At first it was just static. Then something deeper beneath the fuzz. A faint melody, like a child humming a lullaby, distorted through broken speakers. It made my skin crawl. Then came the voice. A child's voice. "You drove him before..." I froze. The voice was soft. Too soft for someone talking through a radio. It sounded like it was inside the cab. "You never remembered." The humming returned, slower now. Off-key, like something out of a nightmare lullaby. Not until now. I lunged for the radio, switching it off, but the sound didn't stop. The humming continued. The voice kept whispering. "You promised you'd come home. You said you'd be back." I stared at the rearview mirror. Still no one in the back seat. But the blood. It was spreading. It was moving like something beneath the surface was breathing, trying to rise. I slammed the gear into park and flung the door open, gasping for air. The fog was even thicker outside, but I didn't care. I needed to breathe. I needed to escape that smell, that voice, that awful thick silence that followed me everywhere now. I stepped out, boots crunching against what I thought was gravel but felt like broken glass. Behind me, the cab radio clicked back on. Only one word now, repeating, over and over. "Remember, remember, remember." I backed away from the cab slowly. My breath clouded in front of me, my pulse pounding in my ears. Then I saw it. In the fog, just ahead of the cab's headlights, a silhouette. Small, standing still. A child. No face, just a shape. Holding something. A stuffed bear, number A hat, a wide-brimmed black hat. I took a step forward, trembling. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. But the child didn't move, didn't answer, just stood there, holding the hat. Then the radio crackled one last time. "He always comes back." I pulled over to breathe, but the buildings were rotting. Time had broken here. I stumbled back into the cab, heart racing, vision blurred by fog and panic. The door slammed shut on its own as I sat behind the wheel again. The child, the figure, was gone. Just swallowed by the thick, ghostly air like it had never been there at all. But the blood on the seat was still there, still fresh, still warm. And the whispers, they were getting quieter, like whatever was speaking was backing away, hiding, waiting. I needed to breathe. I needed to think. I needed to get out. I pulled the car to the side of the road, or at least what I thought was the side. It felt more like I was drifting off the edge of a dream. There were no curbs, no sidewalks, no signs of human life. I opened the door and stepped out, trying to shake off the cold crawling inside me. The world outside had changed. The city, the one I knew, the one I'd driven for years, was gone. The buildings that surrounded me now were hollow shells, crumbling brick and shattered windows, storefronts eaten by ivy and decay. A playground stood crooked in the distance, its rusted swing swaying without wind. Everything was dead, as if time had snapped in half and left me on the wrong side. I dropped to my knees, heart pounding, breath catching in my throat like it didn't want to go down. I grabbed a chunk of gravel and crushed it in my hand, just to feel something real. That's when I saw it. A newspaper. Old, brittle, fluttering weakly under the cab's tire like it had been waiting there. I picked it up. The front page was yellowed, stained. The headline was almost illegible. But not the photo. It was me. My face. My name. David S. Rowe. Local cab driver killed in early morning shooting. The date stamped below it hit me like a gut punch. February 5th, 2018. I felt the ground tilt. No, that can't be right. That's today. I turned slowly to the cab, blinking hard, trying to clear my vision, trying to wake up. The dashboard clock read 2:33 a.m. unmoving, unchanging, frozen like the city around me. I ran my hands through my hair, pulling at the roots. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. That name, that date, that time, it all lined up. You died, David. The words echoed through my mind, not spoken by a voice, but remembered. Suddenly, the blood on the back seat didn't seem out of place. The passenger's disappearance made sense in the worst possible way. The whispers knew things only I knew. The cab radio, the looping streets, the broken meter, all of it. I was dead, and I didn't know it. I hadn't just taken a wrong turn. I'd never made it home that night. I sank to the ground, hands trembling, that newspaper still clutched in my fist. My cab, the only thing still intact, sat waiting behind me like a loyal dog. But now, it looked different too. The paint was peeling. The tires were flat. The windows cracked, like it had been sitting here for years. And still, the dashboard glowed faintly. 2:33 a.m. The moment the ride started. The moment everything ended. I don't remember agreeing to another ride, but someone was already sitting in the back. I don't know how long I sat in the street, gripping the old newspaper like a life raft in a sea of ghosts. My body was frozen, not just from the cold, but from the weight of truth sinking deeper into my bones. I died, and the city I thought I knew was just a memory I'd been trapped inside. I don't remember getting back in the cab. One moment, I was standing outside staring at the newspaper. The next, I was behind the wheel again. The engine was idling low, headlights slicing through a fog that seemed to grow thicker with every breath. That's when I heard the click of the back door. I flinched. My heart stuttered. I didn't call for another ride. I didn't hear footsteps. But when I looked in the mirror, someone was there. Not the man in the black suit. Not the pale child. This figure was different. Face hidden in shadow, head slightly tilted, hands resting neatly on their lap. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, just a shape, a presence. They spoke without moving their lips. Black Hollow Cemetery. I opened my mouth to say no, to scream, to demand an explanation, but nothing came out. My limbs locked, my hands gripped the wheel, and my foot pressed the gas. I wasn't driving anymore. Something else was. The cab turned itself around, and the city behind us crumbled into smoke. We rolled forward into darkness, the roads growing thinner, older, wilder. The yellow lines disappeared. Streetlights gave way to crooked trees that leaned too close to the road, branches scraping the roof like skeletal fingers. Fog thickened. Time slowed. I tried to turn my head, but my neck wouldn't move. The only thing I could do was glance into the mirror, and every time I did, the passenger seemed closer. Not physically, spiritually, like they were peeling back something inside me, revealing something I didn't want to see. We passed a rusted sign on the side of the road. The letters were barely legible, but I could make them out. Black Hollow Cemetery. The cab slowed on its own. The road had turned to gravel, then dirt, then something that didn't feel like ground at all. We drove under a canopy of dead branches until the trees finally opened into a clearing. Moonlight spilled over cracked gravestones and broken statues of angels with missing faces. The cab rolled to a stop in front of a single grave, freshly dug. The mound of dirt was still moist, piled up beside a marble headstone wrapped in fog. I stared at it, unable to move, unable to breathe. The passenger stepped out. I didn't see the door open. I didn't hear it close. One moment, they were there. The next, they were gone. The cab was empty, except me, and the grave in front of me. I opened the door slowly. My legs felt numb as I stepped out. The fog swallowed me in silence. I took a few trembling steps toward the headstone, and then I saw the name. David S. Rowe, 1981 to 2018. Forever behind the wheel. My knees buckled. I dropped into the cold grass, heart shattering, breath ripped from my lungs. It was real. It was always real. This was my grave, and my ride was nearly over. There was no passenger, just a mirror, and in it, I saw myself, but not alive. I couldn't move, not at first. The grave was real, too real. The dirt was fresh and damp. The stone was clean, polished, as if someone had just placed it here. David S. Rowe, 1981 to 2018. Forever behind the wheel. The words hit harder than a crash. My name, my life, my death. The night I thought I survived, I hadn't. The passenger, the man in the black suit, hadn't just been a ghost. He had been a guide, and I'd been too dead to notice. I turned back toward the cab. That's when I saw it. There was no passenger in the back seat anymore, just a mirror, rectangular, hung unnaturally still facing the front, fogged around the edges like breath had just touched it. I stepped closer, almost unwillingly, and stared into the glass. And there I was, but not me. Not as I should have been. My skin was pale, bluish gray. My driver's uniform torn, blood-soaked. My eyes, glassy, vacant. A passenger now, sitting quietly in the back seat like someone waiting for a ride that would never come. I staggered back. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." That's when I heard her voice. Software. Familiar. Warm. "David." I turned toward the voice. Beneath the twisted branches of a leafless willow tree at the edge of the cemetery stood a woman. Hands clasped, face hidden by shadows. She stepped forward into the pale light, and my heart cracked. Emily? My daughter, but older, grown. Her eyes rimmed with tears, her voice trembling. "My girl?" I whispered again, choking on the words. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You died, Dad, 7 years ago. You picked up a man who had just robbed a pawn shop. He panicked, shot you, at 2:33 a.m. She swallowed hard. You didn't move on. You just kept driving, over and over, stuck in the last thing you remembered doing." I dropped to my knees. All this time, the fog, the looping streets, the cab. I hadn't been surviving the night shift. I'd been reliving it. Every single night. A ghost behind the wheel. A soul caught in a loop. A driver with nowhere left to go. Emily stepped closer. "Mom forgave you. I forgave you. We're okay now. You don't have to keep driving. You can come home, Dad." Her voice cracked. "You can rest." And just like that, the cold lifted. The wind stopped howling. The fog began to dissolve. The grave faded into light. So did the cab, the road, the cemetery, the blood, the whispers, the static. Gone. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, I was standing in a sunlit field, green grass beneath me, blue sky above. And there, running toward me, arms wide, smile wide, was Emily. Not the older one, but my little girl. The way she looked at 5, laughing like she used to, free, alive. I dropped to my knees, and I held her like I never got to, held her like I'd waited 7 years to. And in that moment, for the first time since 2:33 a.m. on a winter night in 2018, I felt peace. I was never afraid of dying. I was afraid of being forgotten. But now, I've finally been remembered.